Markets mostly fall as China's factory activity growth misses expectations. Global trade tensions mount as investors brace for economic shifts under Trump 2.0. And we look at the impact of Iran's energy crisis as factories shut down and leave many homes freezing. Hello, I'm Taiba Aydin with the latest business and finance news here on TRT World. Asian markets mostly fell on the last trading day of the year as investors assessed China's manufacturing growth, missing expectations. The Purchasing Managers Index for December came in at 50.1, signalling that Beijing's stimulus measures were not sufficient to meaningfully boost the country's ailing economy. Analysts had expected a reading of 50.3, the same as November's PMI. A reading above 50 indicates growth in activity, while a figure below that level points to contraction. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index ended a shortened trading day marginally higher, while mainland China's CSI 300 fell 0.75%. Meanwhile, the US Treasury Department says Chinese hackers remotely accessed several workstations and unclassified documents. The incident took place earlier in December after a Chinese state-sponsored actor compromised a third-party cybersecurity service provider. The service has since been taken offline, and there is no evidence the hackers still have access to departmental information. Craig Boswell has more from Washington, D.C.
This is being described as a major incident, and according to the Treasury Department, they're now saying it was December the 8th that they learned that what the U.S. government is calling a state-run or state-activated China hacking operation was able to get access to a key from this third-party vendor, use that key to then override the system and then gain remote access to workstations, to documents that the Treasury Department says were unclassified. So there are generally protocols that are put into place when this happens. The Biden administration, the Treasury Department, will notify lawmakers. They've done that, and they do so by letter. This is the letter in which that they have instructed lawmakers as to what they know about this so far. And I'll read one quick quote. They said the hackers gained access to a key used by the vendor to secure a cloud-based service used to remotely provide technical support for Treasury Department offices and end users. So with that access to that stolen key, they override the security. Now, this is kind of cursory information. We don't know how many workstations. We don't know how many documents. They do say they are unclassified. They say that particular service has been taken offline, that they believe it is no longer accessible. But we do know now with this letter that there will be a supplemental bit of information that is going to be provided to Congress.
President-elect Donald Trump has appointed Kevin Moreno Cabrera as the new ambassador to Panama, citing his commitments to protecting U.S. interests. Trump has recently threatened to take over the critical waterway, accusing Panama of ripping off the U.S. by charging high shipping rates. Omar Baccalola reports.
Built by the United States in the early 20th century, the Panama Canal has long been a cornerstone of global trade. It links the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, saving ships a 13,000-kilometer journey around South America. Handling roughly $270 billion in cargo annually, nearly three-quarters of the traffic is tied to the U.S. But now, this critical waterway is at the center of a diplomatic storm. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has recently reignited controversy, accusing Panama of overcharging for access. He claims the country has failed to honor the moral and legal principles of the treaty under which the U.S. handed over the canal to Panama in 1999.
You got to treat us fairly, and they haven't treated us fairly. If the principles, both moral and legal, of this magnanimous gesture of giving are not followed, then we will demand that the Panama Canal be returned to the United States of America in full, quickly, and without question. I'm not going to stand for it. So to the officials of Panama, please be guided accordingly.
Panama has strongly rejected Trump's claims, stating that the canal's sovereignty is non-negotiable.
The specific approach to canal is Panamanian and belongs to Panamanians. There is no possibility of opening any kind of conversation about this reality that has cost the country blood, sweat, and tears to achieve.
The controversy has also drawn sharp criticism from Panamanian civil groups.
The threat from Donald Trump to believe himself as the owner of our country and decide whether he takes control of the canal administration, when historically the people have already shown they are capable of recovering their territory. And we will not give it up again, no matter how many alliances he forms or negotiations he makes with those in power.
Last week, Trump claimed Chinese soldiers were stationed at the canal, an allegation quickly denied by Beijing.
From China's side, we will continue to respect Panama's sovereignty over the canal and recognize the canal as a permanently neutral international waterway.
Trump's remarks haven't been limited to Panama. In a series of social media posts, he mocked Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau as a governor and suggested Canada could become America's 51st state. He also repeated calls from his first term for the US to buy Greenland from Denmark. The Danes and Greenland say it's not for sale. Talk like this raises further concerns over the stability of international trade in 2025, with Trump's inauguration less than a month away. Ömer Bakkaloğlu, TRT World.
The global economic landscape is shifting rapidly with innovative technologies, powerful trade agreements and emerging alliances redefining how wealth and opportunities are distributed. As the electric vehicle revolution accelerates, traditional currencies face challenges from growing regional cooperation like BRICS. Meanwhile, global trade continues to be the lifeblood of economies worldwide, highlighting the interconnectivity of today's markets. The EV market is projected to hit $1.5 trillion by 2025, driven by a 50% annual growth rate. This shift is creating $4.5 billion in green jobs and accelerating global adoption of sustainable transport. Global trade reached $24 trillion in 2024, contributing $6 trillion to GDP. Over 3 million SMEs are thriving thanks to reduced barriers and expanded international markets. BRICS countries conduct $1 trillion in local currency trade, supported by 25% of gold reserves. This shift has boosted trade volumes by 15%, strengthening regional and global economic ties. For more, we're joined by Francesco Rizzuto, Professor of European Law at Liverpool Hope University. Good to have you back on the programme, Professor. Now, given the recent shift in the economic landscape, how do you see global trade change in the next 4 to 5 years?
Well, good morning, by the way, and Happy New Year to everybody. I think that we're going to see a world that will be characterized by what many people expect, and that is competing trade blocs. Whether it's BRICS, and India will be part of that, we're going to see China actually also be slightly more aggressive by charging lower prices for one of the items that you had just before, EV cars, which are big sales in China, but not so much in Europe. And clearly the dominant feature is going to be a United States under Trump that is going to be extremely aggressive in terms of its international trade policies by charging tariffs 20 to 60%, Europe across to China. We are basically going to see America cut taxes and cut regulation to attract investment. That's what we're going to see there. In Europe, of course, we've got a real problem. We don't know what to do next because our political leaders simply can't agree that we are gradually declining, or they may agree on that, but they don't agree on what to do next. So a world of competing blocs where trade will continue, but if you like, a lot of the trade will actually occur within the blocks rather than across the blocks. And when they do occur across the blocks, and I've talked about China, they will be to try and undercut or to put up barriers against other blocks.
Now, de-dollarization has been a major trend for these trade blocs. What role do BRICS nations in particular play in these efforts, particularly in challenging the more traditional systems that we have at the moment?
I'm not so sure that the BRICS countries are fully agreed on de-dollarization. I can see why the Russians might want to do it, but I'm not so sure that the Indians or the Chinese, for that matter, given them the dollars that the Chinese hold, that they would be particularly keen on that kind of thing. So I'm not so sure that that's going to happen, quite honestly. I think that there's a lot of politicking going on here that in the real world of international finance won't necessarily play out the way some people think it may.
And what policies can governments implement to ensure inclusive economic benefits from current challenges?
That's a very, very difficult question to answer. I think that many governments, it depends on where you are, which part of the world you are, and what your geopolitical interests are. It is absolutely clear that some countries, like the country that you're broadcasting from, will be very, very keen on if you like, highlighting the importance of inclusiveness, because, of course, it's a very, very good and very useful way of ensuring that one's, if you like, ideological and geopolitical footprint broadens, expands. For others, the United States, are they that particularly interested in that? Not so much. In Europe, they will talk that talk, but will they actually do it? And what does that actually mean? Does it mean having trade policies or development aid policies that are expansive? Without a doubt, there's a need, because, of course, that's part of the competitive environment as well. If we look at what's happened in Africa, for example, and the way in which the Chinese have used the policy of inclusiveness actually to ensure that their material needs for raw materials in terms of their economy are sustained. So if you like, it's a double-edged sword. I think some countries will be more sincere in doing that than others. I think some countries will be quite cynical in the way they approach that problem.
Right, Professor Francesco Rizzuto from Liverpool Hope University, thank you very much for your analysis.
Thank you. Happy New Year to everybody.
Now a quick look at some of the other top business stories from around the world. Maïssa Sabrine has been appointed as the interim governor of Syria's central bank, making history as the first woman to lead the central bank. She has held key roles at the bank, including deputy governor and head of the office control division, and has been on the board of the Damascus Securities Exchange. Sabrine's appointment follows Aisha Adib's role as head of the Women's Affairs Office in Syria's new administration. German air taxi startup Volocopter has filed for insolvency, stating it's unable to raise new funds to maintain operations. A court-appointed administrator is working on a restructuring plan to attract investors by February. The electric vertical takeoff and landing industry is facing a cash crisis, struggling to meet its capital-intensive operational demands. And shareholders of David Beckham's branded businesses have received $124 million in dividends. That's as profits continue to rise thanks to endorsements, digital content and new consumer product launches. His company, DRJB Holdings, manages licensing deals with global brands like Boss and Stella Artois and produced the hit Netflix documentary about Beckham through Studio 99. A nation rich in natural gas and oil, Iran is struggling to keep the lights on. From factories shutting down to schools moving online, the consequences stretch beyond inconvenience. And the ongoing crisis isn't just about energy. It's a case study in how sanctions, infrastructure failures, and policy missteps can immobilize an entire economy. Iran holds the world's second largest natural gas reserves, totaling 34 trillion cubic meters. Despite this wealth, daily gas shortages exceed 350 million cubic meters. The country's inability to harness its resources effectively highlights systematic inefficiencies. Power cuts cost the Iranian economy an estimated $58 billion annually. Manufacturing losses last week alone reduced production by 30 to 50%. The ripple effects of outages impacts major industries, education and daily life, exacerbating the crisis. While the global average share of renewables is 13%, Iran's is a mere 0.6%. Plans to reach 30 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2030 face financial and technological hurdles. Energy inefficiency and outdated infrastructure add to the economic impact of delays. Decades of sanctions have stifled foreign investment in energy infrastructure. Mismanagement and corruption fuel wasteful consumption and hinder modernization. Combined, these factors leave the country unable to meet demand for or mitigate losses. For more, we're joined by Mustafa Caner, Assistant Professor of Iranian Studies at Sakarya University's Middle East Institute. Good to have you on the program with us. Now, it's quite a paradox that Iran holds massive energy reserves, but is struggling with an electricity crisis at the same time. How can it balance its domestic energy needs while addressing outdated infrastructure?
Thank you for having me. Apparently, President Pezeshkian's solution is suggestion that turning down the thermostats is not the real solution here. I think Iran's energy crisis stems from decades of neglect, not just the actions of one single politician, single government, or a single government term. The population has grown significantly for the last 30, 40 years, but the energy infrastructure mainly stayed the same. It hasn't kept the pace. So blaming one politician, Mr. Pezeshkian, or any other is not fair here. The real solution lies in modernizing the energy infrastructure, diversifying energy sources, creating a stable energy systems. So addressing this challenge requires a long-term planning, and it goes beyond one single government. So it needs a long-term planning.
And what role do international sanctions play in Iran's energy crisis? And can we expect to see any changes geopolitically in the coming years?
Of course, international sanctions played a major role here. I'm not excluding mismanagement option here. Certainly, mismanagement contributes this picture. However, sanctions mainly hindered efforts to renew energy infrastructure or maintain the energy infrastructure. So to address this, maybe a new deal is needed, like the one in 2015. But now the 2015 deal, namely JCPOA, is outdated. And with the Trump administration coming to power, it's expected the Trump administration to impose new sanctions, namely snapback sanctions, by until the October 2025, because it's the deadline of the 2015 deal. So a new agreement, I think it will include other topics as well, with the nuclear file of the country, like the missile program, other broader geopolitical concerns. So such a comprehensive deal, I think, will be the key to resolve the sanctions issue.
Okay, Mustafa Caner, we will have to leave it there. Mustafa Caner, Assistant Professor of Iranian Studies at Sakarya University's Middle East Institute. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Now, after initially showing growth despite global sanctions, the Russian economy is expected to slow down in 2025, according to President Vladimir Putin. He added that the key task would be to rein in runaway inflation and increase people's income. All this as defense spending is at an all-time high. Dasha Chanushova is in Moscow looking at how the economy is affecting the Russian holiday season.
A traditional part of a New Year Eve staple in Russia and in the post-Soviet states, the Olivier salad. It has many different recipes, but all share some basic ingredients: diced boiled potatoes, carrots, eggs, green peas, pickled cucumbers, apples, ham and mayonnaise. The universal availability of the recipe makes it a reliable indicator of year-on-year price growth. In 2024, the cost of Olivier salad in Russia has almost doubled, from around $2 to $3.5, according to the Parliamentskaya Gazeta. The change, noticed by consumers, is affecting what they select for their holiday menus.
I will not cook several salads for myself this year. I won't buy delicacies, but with the saved money, my child will get the New Year gifts.
I have noticed a significant price hike. I look for what's cheaper now. Unwashed carrots, I have to look for good deals.
The wider outlook suggests there are deeper problems, including a risk of stagflation, which is a combination of slow economic growth and growing inflation. And although this scenario is not seen as imminent, experts are concerned.
The economy is clearly overheating, and of course the actions of the central bank are aimed at cooling. But we have a significant imbalance in the economy, associated with subsidizing parts of the industries, and of course a high key rate hits the business sector, especially for small and medium-sized businesses which are not related to state contracts. And in this respect, the transformation of the economy continues, so low unemployment characterizes this overheating.
All that comes as Russia's defense spending continues to grow and will account for around a third of Russia's spending in 2025. Coupled with a labor shortage, high interest rate and increased tax payments, many wonder what this social recipe will add up to.
External pressure has forced economic evolution in all directions. New industrial development, new methods of payments and delivery routes invented. An increased spending on military industrial complex and defense is creating what many experts call a new middle class. But as current imbalances are becoming more visible, ordinary Russians wonder how sustainable is the safety margin added to Russia's transforming economy. Dasha Chanushova, TRT World, Moscow.
Every December, thousands of Nigerians living abroad fly to their home country to celebrate the festive season. Usually, West Africans return mainly from Europe and America for parties, weddings, street carnivals, Afrobeats concerts and family reunions. In what is now called Dirty December, Hilary Noruko tells us more from Lagos.
The Murtala Mohammed International Airport gets quite busy in December as thousands of Nigerians living abroad fly into the country. They come to reconnect with family, keep in touch with their culture, and celebrate Christmas and other end-of-year festivities. This year, the Nigerian diaspora has booked nearly every room in Lagos. Going to the many island beaches in the city is one of their favorite pastimes. This Ilashe beach is filled with first and second generation Nigerians living abroad who just got back.
Families in Lagos, and most of the people actually know I also here to see family. But at the same time, we know Lagos is like the economical capital. So if you want to do anything that is going to be similar to what you might be doing over there, you're most likely to find it in Lagos. Because to be fair, there's almost no activity you want to do maybe in the UK or in the US that you almost can't find in Lagos.
I made a promise to myself that every year I would be in Africa in some capacity every December as a refresh, as a restart button for the year. And I've just kept that promise to myself. And I'm here now, 2024.
About 17 million Nigerians live abroad, according to the International Organization for Migration. And they send more than $20 billion home every year, usually for personal or family projects. Financial experts say this money could grow and should be used as an economic growth driver.
You know, where the government make arrangement with the private sector and they can have some sort of trade event or whatever kind of event you want to call it, where this diaspora people can visit, get an idea of where the opportunities are.
The returning Nigerian diaspora is capitalizing on the weakening naira, which significantly boosts their spending power since they arrive with foreign currency. In stark contrast, locals say this year's celebrations have been deflated by soaring food and fuel prices.
Everything has increased now. The things you are buying 200 before, you are buying them 1,000. So people are not happy about it. The country is so tough.
Disposable income for a lot of people has really gone down. There's been a lot of reduction in disposable income. That means that people that depends on you, there's an increase in the number of people that depends on you for one or two things. So it's a lot of burden on me personally.
With inflation skyrocketing to a 3-decade high of 34.5%, millions of Nigerians are reducing their end-of-year expenses. This shift means that less people are able to enjoy the festivities as usual. Hilary Nnaruka, TRT World, Lagos.
Well, that's all your business news for now. Thanks for watching.